Welcome back to New Day. The most fiery words from last night didn't come from the president's podium. Take a look at what happened after the State of the Union address when New York Congressman Michael Grimm physically threatened a local reporter.
Why? Let me be clear to you. You have to do that to me again in 3 days.
I just wanted to ask you. Why? It's a valid question.
I'm telling you. No, you're not man. You're not man. Like a boy.
I'll break you in half like a boy. What would make a congressman say something like that? The journalist he said it to is Michael Scotto. He's from New York 1. Grimm clearly livid. Why? Well, Scotto asked him about an ongoing federal investigation into his campaign fundraising. He's been asked about it a lot. I actually spoke with Scotto earlier this morning. He's the reporter again, and got his reaction and reliving of this congressman's bizarre outburst.
I was surprised by his reaction. I asked that question at the very end of an interview about the State of the Union address. I decided to throw in that question about the investigation because we had been waiting to hear from him on allegations that had surfaced just a couple of weeks ago. And I asked that question. I really wasn't expecting much of a response. I thought maybe he'd say, you know, I don't want to talk about that, or, you know, I've done nothing wrong, something to that extent. And then it kind of devolved into what we saw on television.
You seem to sense something in his eyes when he's looking back at you. What did you see?
So what happened was we taped this segment basically as live. It was going to air as is. And I asked him that question, and he said, I don't want to talk about it, and walked off. So I then had to turn back to the camera and kind of explain as to why he left the interview. And I think it was during that time he got really infuriated and then came back to me once I had wrapped up and then leaned over and said what he said, basically saying that if I did something like that again, he was going to throw me over the balcony. I mean, I'm a New York City reporter. I'm used to pushback, but I had never encountered anything like that.
No, right? I mean, yeah, look, you cover politics. It can get ugly. There are a lot of threats and things that go on. Do you believe the substance of the threat, or are these just angry words?
No, I don't believe the substance of the threat at all. I mean, I'm not taking it personally. I just think he was angry by the fact that I asked that question, and I think he was even more angry by the fact that I kind of explained to viewers why he was not going to answer that question. So I'm not taking it personally. I'm not frightened by it. I think it's just, you know, it goes with the territory.
You know him. You've interviewed him a lot. You're a hard-nosed guy. Everybody knows that. You don't pull any punches. But were you surprised by his lack of discretion, coming back in front of a camera, whispering as if the mics wouldn't pick it up? He should know better.
Yeah, I mean, that was surprising because he knew. I had told him that we were going to air this as is, so he knew that this was essentially, for all intents and purposes, a live situation. And he knew that the camera was rolling. He knew that it was going back to New York 1. So for him to come back and say that, I mean, was surprising to me. He had to have known, I mean, it's kind of PR 101, not to say anything like that in front of an open mic.
And good for Scotto for standing in there. He was doing his job as a reporter, and we've reached out to the congressman to give him an opportunity to explain what's going on and say the right thing and hopefully put this past him before it becomes even more of a snowball effect here, Kate, because I have to tell you, this was unusual, as we both know. Even in an ugly game of politics, you just don't see things like this very often.
No, and you well know not to let it happen on camera if you're going to let it happen at all. Thanks so much, Chris.